Hello, everyone, and welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I'm the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. We just had this crazy blackout for a couple hours for a bunch of neighborhoods, Los Feliz and Echo Park and Silver Lake, and it was crazy to feel genuine darkness, genuine pitch black nothingness, and to only have our phones and iPads and computers and I guess each other to entertain ourselves till the whatever the problem was. I have a feeling that LADWP fucked something up because there were trucks out there before the blackout happened, and I think they did something and they accidentally cut some wire and we're like, ugh. So that's where I am, but I love this episode and I'm so glad you get to hear it. Today's guest is Jason Aaron. And if you don't know who Jason is, I'm going to read you his bio right now. Originally from Piney Woods, Alabama, comics writer Jason Aaron started writing comics professionally after winning a Marvel Comics Talent Search contest in 2001. This opened the door for him, and Vertigo published his first major work, The Other Side, in 2006. This netted him an Eisner Award, and since then Jason has written acclaimed runs on both mainstream and his own creator-owned comics, some of which include, this is just a sampling, Wolverine and the X-Men, The Punisher, The Avengers, Thor, Scalped, Once Upon a Time at the End of the World, Southern Bastards, and many, many more. Currently, Jason is writing the fantastic Superman reboot, Absolute Superman, as well as a brilliant Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle series for IDW. I love both of them. And I've been a huge fan of Jason since I read Scalped back when it came out originally. So, I don't know, what's that, sometime in the late, I think I was in grad school still? I don't know, sometime in the aughts. But based on Jason's writing, I kind of, in my mind, had pictured a very, I don't know, severe, serious, I imagined someone like that. And instead, Jason was just the loveliest person. And I've been doing this professionally for just a little over 10 years now. I should know that just because, I mean, for God's sake, I've written scripts about murder. Just because you write something doesn't mean that you necessarily lived it. Just because you're good, I guess because Jason's such a good writer, I just assume that some of the menace, or some of the violence that's in his work maybe came from a personal place. I don't know. I mean, we talk about it. There's something there. And a lot of stuff about growing up in rural Alabama and so much more. I hope you enjoy this episode. Jason's great. I love, I think, basically everything I've ever read of his. So it was a joy to get to talk to him, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Coming up on the show, I am doing a bunch of, I've been trying to, I did a lot of musicians this year, and I'm like, all right, let's really concentrate and get some folks from other walks of life on this show. And I'm doing a lot of TV writers and comics folks, both writers and artists coming up. Brian Blomerth next week, very cool indie comics guy who writes a lot about psychedelics. So stay tuned for that. But for now, let's talk to Jason. We just moved, so it's, please forgive the absolute mess behind me.
I just moved too, so if you could see in front of my desk, it's all boxes.
But it looks beautiful behind.
Well, sure. I mean, the shelves are an easy part. It's easy to empty those boxes and put stuff on shelves, but everything else is still a mess. So I get it.
Where'd you move from?
I mean, not far from like one part of the Kansas City suburbs to another.
Wait, what brought you to Kansas City?
I moved here 24 years ago now. I didn't know anybody from Kansas City except my sister had married a guy from KC and moved here. So I knew one person and kind of just, wanted to move somewhere. there was in Alabama, and thought, well, I know one person in Kansas City. Let me go try that. And I've been here ever since.
Really, it was just a whim, just a complete kind of like, well, it's here.
Kind of, it's like that. Springsteen talks about, so many of his songs are about the joy of being young and leaving the place where you grew up and moving somewhere completely new. Like there's a thrill and a power in that. So I think it was really even if I didn't realize it at the time, just the feeling of that, wanting to leave everything I knew and go somewhere where I could kind of be who I wanted to be and, try to figure my shit out.
Did you feel like in Alabama you were repressing who you wanted to be, or did you feel like you couldn't even discover who that was?
I mean, I think I was still in the midst of discovering that. I think I knew, I'd gone from being pretty like raised very Christian, um, a very kind of devout churchgoer,
Mm-hmm.
like quiet, nerdy, good Christian kid in the South. But I also, read a lot of weird shit, and I listened to, I've loved Prince, and so I loved a lot of things that kind of didn't fit in that box. So I don't know. I think I was, in some ways, I'm still exactly the same person I was when I was 17. And literally, I sit at my work desk, surrounded by childhood toys, like literally, all the Kenner Superpowers figures that I played with as a kid, and my Mighty Men and Monster Maker set. So in some ways, I'm literally, I've never let go of those things that gave me the most joy when I was a kid. In other ways, I'm very, very far removed from that kid and from growing up in the South and growing up in small town Alabama. I think, coming to Kansas City for me was a big part of that. It's not like Kansas City is the world's most metropolitan or forward-thinking city, but compared to where I came from, it was, and I've come to love it here, and not to mention the people I love most, and my kids are here. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's a big city, and I looked up, Jasper, Alabama is, I think it was funny. Wikipedia had a breakdown of population by decade, and I think around the time that you were a kid, the population was something like 11,000 people.
Yeah. When Jasper was still like town, I grew up in a couple different spots. One of them was Piney Woods, Alabama. So like, still a drive away from Jasper, more out in the country. Jasper was where you went, when you need to go to the grocery store or go to Walmart.
So wait, so where are you actually born then?
I would say Piney Woods. I mean, we lived in a couple spots around there, but yeah, Piney Woods, Alabama. So in the, Jasper vicinity.
Is that like the suburbs, or is that more of just like a separate town that's just kind of over? And Jasper,
I mean, it's the country, so I don't think you could use the word suburbs. It's not suburban. It's,
farm herbs, rural herbs.
Yeah, it's just a lot of, I mean, it's Alabama, so it's mostly hills and trees, lots of pine trees, just a few houses scattered here and there down dirt roads.
And is that basically what your childhood was like? Was just like all this ruralness?
Yeah, I mean, we moved to a different part of Alabama when I was in middle school. So from like, 8th grade on, it was a little more suburban, traditionally suburban. But yeah, before that, it was kind of living out in the woods, in a dead end street with 3 houses on it, where I'd spent all my time running through those woods. Just, there was sort of behind their house, thick woods with kind of made in sort of like a valley with a stream running through the middle of it. I spent all my time down there, like, running a lot of time by myself, like, because my siblings are all quite a bit older. So running through those woods, making up stories in my head, running around the backyard with my Star Wars figures.
Yeah.
The Bug Wars, the book I'm doing in February, then my new image book is the like I drew a map for Mahmoud Asrar, who's drawing the book. I drew a really, poorly drawn, shitty map because it's the yard in the story is my backyard from when I was a kid. And the woods are the same. So it's in my mind, that house is the house had a huge front yard, huge backyard, woods where I could just kind of wander for what seemed like miles without, running into any fences or houses. In my mind, that's kind of like where I became, a storyteller, where I became a writer. And I was falling in love with comics at the same time. So it was all beginning to happen for me, I think, right there. I just didn't know it.
I want to get back to some of the stuff you said earlier, but I want to follow this for a little bit because one of the things that I look at a lot on the show is a lot of people have the same. I'm sure there's a lot of people that had the same kind of upbringing as you. This. What I'm imagining in my mind when you said there was like I forget what you said, creek. I forget if you said something else, but going through this little valley.
Yeah, stream, creek.
Stream, yeah. Like that's just to me. That's like this beautiful kind of bucolic kind of existence, and it's very inspiring. At least to me, when I see nature, when I'm out in nature, I just it gives me some kind of hope that I don't have in the rest of my life when I look at the world.
Sure.
Right. And so growing up around that, I wonder if that instills in you. But what do you think was the thing that at some point made you want to actually do this, actually write, as opposed to the other people who did have that same kind of upbringing and then never did what you do?
I mean, I think with me, I was always, quiet, kind of shy kid. I had good friends at school, but living in the backwoods in the country, there was no me getting on my bike and riding it to my friend's house. He was like a 45-minute drive away, right? Like you're all scattered throughout a wide area. So I spent a lot, and my siblings were the kind of old, the so much older than me that you enter that point where you're a little more like an only child in some sense, and I spent a lot of my childhood around people who were quite a bit older than me. So I think with all that and kind of just who I am, I just liked being by myself, and I spent a lot of time by myself, and I loved toys, GI Joe figures, Star Wars, loved reading. So I just that's what I did most of the time, and it not in a way where I was saddened by that, but it's that all filled me with joy, and I think writing was the same way. In the beginning, it was just kind of making up stories, and at school, I wrote a few things and had teachers that encouraged me to keep writing, and that to me just became a source of joy. It just made me feel good, made me happy. And I think for me, as someone who I think even now, I'm 51 years old, and I think I still struggle at times to process my thoughts in a way where I can spit them out of my mouth in the form of words, right?
Yep.
But and that's always been the case. I'm better at that now than I was, I think, even when I started writing comics and doing interviews, and much, much better than I was when I was a kid, where it was hard for me to articulate my thoughts and feelings in the form of the spoken word. But man, I could sit down and say anything at all. So to me, it also became a way of like, this is how I communicate with the world, right? Like it's easier for me to do it this way, and more fulfilling for me to do it this way than to say anything. So I think it also became that, like, there was a moment when I was in high school, I guess. I was 15, 16, my girlfriend broke up with me, and then I wrote a poem in some way about her, and we got back together. I'm not saying we got back together because the power of poetry, but I think
Maybe.
there was something about that spoke to me at that age of like, oh shit, I something I wrote, I feel like in some way changed my world, changed my, my circumstances. So I think there was a profound power in that. And, little did I know that's what I would wind up doing for a huge part of my life in a way that would very, very tangibly change my life.
Yeah. Were you like actually consciously aware at the time that you were better, that you could communicate better through the written word than verbally?
Oh, for sure. I, Absolutely, for sure. I mean, I think I was just, I mean, it's not like I was a wallflower. And I went to a small school where it wasn't big enough where we had cliques, really. It's sort of everybody knew everybody. And I had plenty of friends. And then, I think there were always certain circumstances when I was with people I was comfortable with where maybe I would talk too much. I don't know. Maybe you couldn't shut me up. But I think it was still when it came to like really, if it wasn't just like bullshit, talk, when it came to really articulating feelings and emotions, no, I was really, really shitty at that. So I think I was very aware that it's, it's easier for me to put stuff into onto paper than it is to talk about it.
I asked that because I don't think I was consciously aware of that I'm a better writer than I am a speaker until I tried to do this professionally. And it just turned out that I was better on the written page than I was on stage.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, I didn't even know that I could articulate emotions. It just all felt kind of like a barrier to me. Like it really, the way I do mentally visualize is like there would be a time when, I should say something to my girlfriend, or I should tell my friend that I value them as a friend or something like that. And I just could not push past it.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I think that's pretty much the way I felt. I mean, I come from a long line of, Southern people who you keep all that shit inside, and it's not like anybody ever told me it was wrong otherwise, or you shouldn't talk about your feelings. It's just, we didn't do that. That's not what we did. It's not how we were. And that's just, that's what I knew. That's what made sense to me. And that's just the way I was wired. It's been, like I said, I'm a grown ass man now, and it's still a thing I have to like deal with and try to work around and, push my way through.
Yeah. Are you a therapy person?
Yeah. I mean, I have been. I'm not seeing anybody right now, but yeah, definitely off and on. Absolutely. So yeah, that's been one of the things. I mean, they're still depending on the circumstance. There are times now where I still feel like that same 13-year-old kid where I'm just kind of struggling to process my thoughts in any sort of timely way and spit them out. Now, if I'm at a convention, you can be at a convention and doing a panel in front of hundreds of people and I'm fine because I'm just talking about work. I'm talking about comics. I could do that all day long, but you put me in a room, just me and one other person, and you're asking me how I feel about something, I might have a hard time getting a word out.
By the way, you should find a therapist fairly soon because I have a feeling in about 2 months from now, they are going to be booked up from
that's true.
sun up to sunset.
Yeah. That's true. That's probably already booking up right now as we speak.
I'm from Pennsylvania, and I imagine that Alabama and Pennsylvania are fairly different culturally, but it is the same thing. And I think it is for most of America where we are taught, and I don't mean taught like the way you said it, like no one like wagged a finger at me and it was just like, don't articulate your emotions, but it's just, we don't articulate our emotions. We talk about,
right,
the weather or movies or whatever. But we don't
Right.
talk about our inner lives in any depth. And so that's why I ask these questions on the show. I'm always curious, how does someone else break out of that shell? Because I think, the people I talk to make the kind of art they make, whatever it is, music or writing or whatever, right? Yeah, I think I would say probably 99%, if not 100%. I don't want to talk in absolutes, but most of my guests have had to break out of that at some point in order to make the art at the level that they're making it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, to me, again, I feel like in some ways I've broken out of that. Some ways maybe I never will. And, the way I do my job is still the same as what I was doing when I was sitting down to write as a 13-year-old kid. It's still a very solitary, quiet, what feels like to me very selfish pursuit. And then I'm still just doing stuff that I want to do, telling stories I want to tell, creating something that I want to read, and then sending it off into the ether. Now it's doing the job, working in comics and the career I've been able to build has brought so much along with it in terms of the people I've met from all over the world. Literally I've traveled the world because of comics, I have friends all over the world. So I think some of that, to me, that my progression as a person has been about going from being this kid who grew up kind of a sheltered life and, in the backwoods, spending so much time alone playing in the backyard, to somebody who moved away and then traveled the world and been exposed to so much and so many different kinds of people. It can't help but broaden your horizons and I think expand your mind. And that, I think that's, and, the moving to Kansas City, getting married, having kids, getting divorced, meeting my current partner, all those things along the way, good and bad, to me has been a part of like that tug of war, pulling that quiet kid, out of the woods into the light a little bit.
Yeah. Was this a gradual process, or do you think there was an epiphany, let's just say, where both your own internal life and your ability to write at this higher level, that I'm calling it a higher level, kind of blossomed?
I mean, I don't know that there was an epiphany. I mean, I had, moments of realization of just when I kind of realized I didn't believe in God anymore, and when the religion, my faith crumbling was sort of a gradual process for me. And literally there was like a light bulb moment where I was like, oh shit, I don't think I believe any of this anymore. And I definitely had some dark, kind of wayward, depressed years in there where I kind of, started college and thought very much I had kind of a plan of like, okay, I know who I am. I know what I like to do. I know how this is going to go. And then that seemed to kind of fall apart. And, as with a lot of people, that age, you don't really know who you are. You think you do. So I was at that, struggled with that feeling for a while of like, if everything I've thought was kind of wrong, or, these things that I kind of looked at as like bedrock sort of crumbling beneath me, like, where do I go from here? And then so definitely had that feeling of like, well, I need to move away. I need to figure that out somewhere that's not here, right? Somewhere that's not where I'm from, where I'm surrounded by people I grew up with. So moving was a big part of that. And then just trying to reach outside my comfort zone and outside the box I felt like I'd been, spent so much of my life in.
Yeah. I mean, think about this in this sense though. You could have not, right? You could have had all these same feelings and then said, well, it's too scary to move, so I guess I'll just sink into this in some way or find something in my immediate area. And I'm kind of curious, what gave you that courage to leave the this this context you had been in to try to find something new?
I don't know. I mean, I think some of it for me was just that realization of, I wasn't going to be somebody who's going to find happiness working a 9 to 5 job, right? I could sort of figured out pretty quickly like where my passion lay and like what truly made me happy. And part of me was like, well, I'm either going to do that or I don't know. There was no plan B. I'm going to do that or I'm going to work shitty jobs and still, write on the side. I just won't be making any money from it. Like call it courage, call it blind ignorance, call it, lack of foresight and planning, call it whatever you want. To me, it was sort of that or bust, and took me, there were years there of kind of struggling and not having a lot of money and spending tons of time writing with really nothing to show for it. And I always tell people, who are trying to break in that's like the toughest period, right? Because I always feel like you have to kind of treat writing as a job, even when it's not paying you like a job. But if you can do that, if you can make it through that period of time and deal with all that shit and find success doing what you really want to do, you'll never look back and regret a single day of that. It'll all be worth it to have gotten you where you wanted to be.
Yeah. That's the thing that's always puzzled me about, because of the industry I'm in, there's a lot of people that get into writing from other areas, from comedy or from acting or something like that. And I hear a lot of times, a lot of people being like, oh, I hate writing. I like having written, but I hate writing. I'm just like, well, then why are you doing it? Because I actually do love writing. Like I am, like there is some joy in that. And that's the thing that kept me going through those years where, no one, you try sketch out in the basement at UCB and like 3 people give a shit. And you're like, why isn't this hitting? And then eventually you figure it out. Well, some people don't, but like eventually I figured it out. But I still, even those shitty sketches or whatever I was doing at the time, even that stuff, I still loved writing it, even if it was bad.
Sure. No, yeah, I'm with you. Like I was back in Alabama last weekend at my parents' house for a bit, and I've still got a lot of shit in their basement. And I was looking in a dresser, and it's full of notebooks of stuff I'd written, from like high school into college. Tons of stuff. I mean, of course, it's all, looking at it now, I'm horrified and embarrassed by all of it. And I'm like, I should take this outside and burn it so no one ever sees it. But to me, it's absolutely, I enjoy the process of writing. To me, that's still my favorite part of the whole thing. Like more so than, going to the comic book store and seeing a book I wrote on the shelf, even more so than getting to work with the incredible artists I get to work with. The part I just sit and do myself. And then, I'm the first person I'm the first reader. That to me is still the best part. And I would do that even if I wasn't getting paid for it, wasn't making a living for it. Obviously I'd have to do something else to keep the lights on, but I would still be doing that because to me, it's at this point in my life, after writing stories for decades, like it's a fundamental part of how I function. You take it out and it's like a gear's missing and shit just does not click properly.
Yeah.
The example I've said before is I hurt my back a couple of years ago and was sort of laid up in bed and was it's pretty bad. Like couldn't get up, could barely walk. So for a bit I was just kind of high on painkillers and could not write. Couldn't for the life of me, just couldn't. Like my brain was just wrapped in cotton. Like it's not happening. And that that to me felt more debilitating than my back being fucked up. It's not being able, it's like I couldn't breathe, or like my heart wasn't beating properly. It's just there's something that's supposed to be functioning within me that is not, and I hated it. Um, so I think, yeah, it's also that. Like I think everybody who loves to write, loves to draw, loves to perform, musicians, I'm sure it's all the same. Like you all have to have that piece of it of, when you were a kid, you were doing whatever that was
Hmm.
in the backyard, in your room to the wee hours of the morning, just like you had to do it, like you were compelled to do it, like you couldn't wait to do it.
Yep.
Um, I think you still have to be that kid, like you still have to have that drive and that passion because no matter who you are, you're going to have to go through a lot of shit to ever get to a point to actually being successful. And then once you're successful, you have to deal with the whole other level of challenges. And I think if you're going to keep your sanity and going to continue to like produce relevant work, you can't ever lose that passion, that sense of like, I have to do this thing, you know, like if I do nothing else in my existence on this earth, I have to do this thing.
I definitely, if I don't write for a couple days, I definitely get irritable. My wife's a stand-up. If she does not get on stage for a while, you can tell it's like really bugging her.
Right.
She just has these like ideas in her head that she can't do much with, except like, say them to me across the dinner table, which
right. I'm sure it's the same for like a guitarist if they can't pick up a guitar for days, or if it's a fabulous chef who can't cook something for days. It's just like, this is why I'm here. This is what not in some like, grand, again, I'm an atheist, so I don't believe there's no God who put me here to do this. There's no sort of divine muse speaking through me. It's just me doing the work, but still there's something about it that does feel, just holy or imperative. Like, this is my function on this planet, and if I don't do it, then the fuck am I doing here?
I mean, there's a little bit in this narrative of kind of like a break in your life, as you're having this like kind of dawning atheism. It seems like that gives you some space where you can, and then you move to Kansas City, right? At least this is the I'm kind of creating this out of like the pieces you're telling me. But
well, that's right. Yeah.
I'm kind of curious in leading up to that, were you raised with just Christianity in general? Was it a specific denomination?
Yeah, I was Baptist, Southern Baptist.
What is that exact? I'm Jewish, so I know a little bit of like every basic little thing, but I'm not 100% sure on.
I mean, I usually, like everybody here in Kansas City, when I tell them I'm from Alabama and we were very Christian, they think, oh, dude, were you handling snakes? They think like backwoods snake handling, speaking in tongues kind of churches, which I did. I went to, my girlfriend in high school was Pentecostal, so I went to Pentecostal church some, but the Baptist church is it's very quiet and very dry. There's no getting up and running around. You sit, maybe somebody says amen every once in a while, but you just sit and you sing hymns and you listen to the pastor and, shake hands and go home.
So it's a really very buttoned up version of Christianity.
Yeah, it's pretty buttoned up, but there's also, I mean, we'd go to church on Wednesday nights and then Sunday morning and then Sunday nights. And as a kid, like there'd be kind of a youth trips and youth activities, and I did a lot of those. So it was still it was a lot. Like it was a big part of my life for a period there.
Was it fun at all, or was it just all obligation? Or meaningful? Even if not fun, maybe I'm looking for like, did it have any kind of meaning, or was it just like I have to?
No, it would. I mean, it absolutely had a lot of meaning to me. I believed everything, and I did have the faith, and it was a part of my social life too. And I had a lot of friends at church, So yeah, I don't look at it all as an obligation. Like, I mean, I wanted to do that. I was very much drinking the Kool-Aid.
Did your parents believe as well?
Yeah. 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 It was me and my parents, going to church together.
What was carried with that morally? Does that make sense as a question? I realize I said it like I'm Yoda, but like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm kind of curious,
Sure.
like, whenever I talk to, like, I was raised a Reformed Jew, so the religious aspects of it were incidental, at least to me. My parents are, as far as I know, are still, I mean, maybe not after this last election, but like, are still believers. At some point in early high school, it just didn't make sense to me anymore. And I realized I'm agnostic or an atheist. I haven't given it much thought. I guess, maybe I don't know what happened before the Big Bang. So maybe there's a God there. I don't know. But like, that's about it. That's about the only time that any kind of divine thought enters my brain.
Right.
But it was just a thing I had to do. But what I found valuable was the moral framework that Judaism gave me. And that gave it meaning, even though I did not have any kind of faith. And I'm curious if there was more to, if it was this kind of like divine feeling in you, or there was like a framework that came with it, or anything else besides, I mean, you said there was a social aspect.
Yeah. I mean, I was very, very square in high school. Like I hardly ever drank at all, certainly, didn't do any drugs, had never even smoked weed at that point. So I mean, in terms of a moral component, yeah, I was trying to be a good Christian kid during that period in my life. And that didn't change until, college, really.
Did you find, even after you lost your faith, did you find that valuable, the framework that you were given?
Not exactly, because to me, like I don't know, sometimes people have heard people say, like, about atheism, of sort of why, if you don't believe in God, like, why do you, almost like, why do you care about things morally? Why does it matter? To me, it's the opposite of, like, I don't need sort of a promise of paradise or the threat of, eternal damnation to treat people the way that I want to be treated. Because when you don't believe in any of that stuff, this is all that matters. All that matters is how we treat each other here. So I don't know, that part of it really never made sense to me, of like, do we need these guardrails in order to be moral? Yeah.
No, I mean, the thing that I find as an outsider valuable about Christianity are the teachings of Jesus, right? And I mean, the thing that baffles me, and I won't ask you because I've asked many other people and no one has a good answer for me.
A Jesus question?
About like the kind of like the like evangelical mind that centers Jesus as the cornerstone of their beliefs, and yet does what I'll call psychopathic things in our culture at the moment. But
yeah, I don't. I mean, again, having grown up, having spent years of my life truly believing the Bible, and truly believing Jesus was the Son of God. I get, like, if you really, really deeply believe that, I get how that colors your perception of everything, right? Like, if you really believe what we do in this life is going to determine your fate for eternity, yeah, I get how that influences your decisions. Now, if you claim to believe that and then also make the decisions here that don't seem to fit with those teachings of Jesus in any way whatsoever, yeah, then I don't understand where the fuck you're coming from, because none of those what you're saying you believe in, or what you're doing, or what you seem to be supporting, do not fit together in any sort of logical way.
Did your parents support your ambitions to be a writer?
Yeah, my mom, certainly did. My dad, I think, couldn't really wrap his head around it. It's like me saying, I want to be an astronaut. It's like, well, how do you do that? I'm like, I don't know. But yeah, my mom took me to Comic Cons. She was always my biggest fan growing up, still is. Um, so yeah, she supported me in all that, and we had a writer in the family, and then my cousin Gus, who was my mom's nephew, he was a Vietnam vet, Marine combat correspondent, and he wrote a few novels, and one of them, the first one it's called The Short Timers. It's what Full Metal Jacket was based on. So he was, from the same neck of the woods as me. I only met him a few times. He died in the 90s. So he was very much a bigger than life kind of character. Dropped out of high school, joined the Marines. Did a tour in Vietnam. Was a voracious reader, like one of the. I think even now, years later, all the amazingly creative people I've met in my life, I've never met anybody quite like Gus, a guy who could just pontificate on any sort of bizarre, obscure subject you could think of. So we did have kind of one writer in the family, who had found success. I mean, he still was broke a lot of the time because he would blow his money whenever he got it, but certainly lived a life, and the family was very proud of him and his success.
Do you think that gave you any kind of, not just like, oh, this is a path that I can do, but, oh, I like the life he's living and I kind of want to live like that? Not just the writing part of it, but the rest of it.
Yeah, I don't know if I could have articulated that the moment, when I was a kid, the few times we hung out. But absolutely, I think, I had the love, I love to read. Like I love to read from when I first started learning how to read as a kid. So I think I had that where I was just constantly reading all different kind of stuff, not just comics. So I think I got that. I think any writer falls in love with writing by first fall in love with reading. So I think I was on the way to wanting to do that, when I was hanging out with Gus. And yeah, I think he had to have a profound effect on me in that way.
What did your parents do for a living when you were growing up?
My mom stayed home with the kids, and my dad worked at the post office. So part of the time he was postmaster at a couple of different post offices in Alabama.
Did he like it?
Yeah, I think so. Seemed to. He's retired now.
I just always wonder about that. I ask my guests a lot about what their parents did, whether they liked it, because it strikes me that, like, when you're a kid, if you got your antenna up, you can pick up on parental regret pretty easily.
Sure.
And so if it's strong, then it gets in you in some way. And I don't know, there's no necessity to how it affects you, but it definitely affects people.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. No, I don't think there was any regret, for his job or his career. I think he found that fulfilling. When he was the last post office he ran was in Nauvoo, Alabama, which is outside of Jasper. And it's tiny little town, tiny little post office, but it was pretty busy because he shipped out a lot of chickens, because apparently Nauvoo, Alabama was renowned for raising fighting chickens, which of course is illegal to fight the chickens, but apparently you can breed them and sell them to, they were going to Mexico and the Philippines. So apparently Nauvoo, Alabama was a good place to get a cockfighter.
So illegal to fight them, But everything up until the fight, totally legal.
Well, they were definitely also fighting them in Nauvoo, Alabama.
Oh, so okay.
That was happening too.
Wait, sorry. I don't know if you even know this. How do you ship a live chicken? I mean, I guess in a coop, obviously, but like.
Well, this was like, I think pre-September 11th. So I think things changed after that. Yeah. They didn't give a shit back then.
And then after 9/11, they're checking to make sure there's
right.
that the fighting chickens don't have box cutters, I guess.
I think just shipping parameters changed. There's a shoe bomber that could have been a chicken bomber.
Did your parents support your writing when you were younger? Like, where were you getting, besides the fact, the time where you realized like, oh, with this poem, I can actually change things. Were you getting accolades? Were you getting pats on the head from teachers, from your parents? Like, where was the positive reinforcement coming from?
Yeah, I think I had all that along the way through school. Like I said, I remember 4th, 5th grade, 6th grade through there having teachers that encouraged me to write, even though I was writing probably some weird, dark shit, stuff that in a post-Columbine world would maybe get me, put on a watch list. But I had teachers that encouraged me. And then whenever if there was any sort of opportunity at school to write anything, I would do that. So I won, like a short story competition in school, and any sort of school magazines, literary magazines, I would have stuff in those. And I was on the annual staff and school newspaper, and my friends and I, shot our own videos for school projects. Like back in the day when you'd have to hook 2 VCRs together to edit them.
Yep.
So all that, like anything I could do writing wise, I would do it. And I would, lived in a small town, went to a small school. So it's like me and, 3 or 4 other people in the entire school who are like the writers who like to write stuff. So I think everybody would have known, like, that weird quiet guy over there with the mullet, he's a good writer.
So you were locked in at a pretty early age then. Like, this is it. This is what I want to do.
Yeah, I remember saying, pretty young age that I wanted, not just that I wanted to write, but that I wanted to write comics. And then I think as I got older, that kind of turned into a broader, I want to write, because the comic part of it did seem like saying I wanted to go to the moon. I had no idea, well, how the hell do you apply for those jobs?
Yeah.
So I thought, well, like, let me go into journalism. And so that's when I started college. I was a journalism major, and I literally made it through one, or didn't make it through one, intro to journalism class where I was like, I don't think I like this. I don't think this is for me. And then I thought, well, I'll be the next great American novelist. And I spent a lot of time writing, piles and piles of pages of novels that for the most part were never finished. I'd always kind of get deep into one and it would change and grow and expand. And then I'd move on to something else. I had some short stories published. So I was kind of always pursuing writing. And then, I still loved comics, never gave up on wanting to do that, but again, had no idea how. And then I won a Marvel Comics talent search contest kind of out of the blue, and that for the first time, wedged my foot in the door a little bit.
What year was that?
That was to 2002.
Okay. Because that's interesting because, if I have the timeline right, by the time you graduate college, the comic industry is kind of flailing, right? Like
I'd missed the heyday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Marvel was in bankruptcy and the bottom was falling out money wise. But I mean, to me, like, as a comic fan who's been reading weekly, regularly, since like 1985, 86, there was never a point where I just dropped out, where I couldn't find at least some books that I was really, really excited about. I think that the 90s might have been the time where it was the most, things were selling the craziest. I mean, I was buying so much of that stuff, but I think there were maybe fewer books that I was really, really in love with. Um, but yeah, I missed the days of, books selling multi-million copies and people buying a house off of one issue of you know, a image book.
Mm-hmm. How far back does your family go in Alabama? Like generations? Did you emigrate from somewhere? Does your family emigrate from somewhere at some point?
Yeah, we go back a few generations. I mean, I think there's 3 generations buried in Jasper. And then before that, we came from South Carolina. Before that, I'm not really sure. Like I think my dad did one of those, send off and get the DNA test that tells you where you're from. And ours was mostly in English,
Mm.
but we haven't been able to trace like directly who came over on the boat.
I just ask because it seems like your family had a sense of place or sense of groundedness where you grew up.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I would say so. I mean, we moved a lot, but we moved multiple places kind of around Jasper, and then we moved to another part of Alabama, and then my parents ultimately moved back to Jasper, so it was all still within Alabama, but I had loads and loads of, at least on my dad's side, there were lots of aunts and uncles who were in that vicinity. My mom's family was a little more scattered, but grew up with a lot of family, and again, there's a lot that I think even now as a guy who doesn't want to love visiting Alabama, but I don't want to live there anymore. I still very proudly think of myself as a Southern writer, and I'm happy to have had like a small town upbringing. I think it's shaped a lot of who I am, even though, I couldn't live in a town that small and be happy again. I don't think. If anything, my interests, I'd rather move to like the Upper East Side of Manhattan. That's like my dream, as opposed to let me get a house in the middle of nowhere with, where I can't see a neighbor for miles. I don't think I would like that anymore.
I ask that because I'm trying to get a sense, besides, being a little bit solitary, kind of having a sense of, I'm a writer from an early age. Did you feel like you belonged?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I think, if you'd asked me at the time, I think I would have said yes. But looking back, no, I don't think I did. I mean, I think that's why I spent so much time in my own head. I think I wanted to fit in. In the South and small town, like you're supposed to fit in. You're not. It's not super welcoming for people who are like others. So everybody's kind of supposed to be pulling in the same direction. And so I think there's, I think I've wanted to as well. I mean, I think I was not enthused at the time when kind of the faith part of things crumbled apart for me and that part of my life disappeared. Like that was scary because it means this thing you've based so much on is you don't believe anymore. And what does that mean for your life in general? So, and I think I just didn't, there was a lot about life there that didn't click for me or didn't seem to be satisfying, especially as I got older. I just kind of wanted to see more, wanted to experience more. Yeah, I think the even though I still got really good friends that I knew from that period of time, I think I've changed a lot kind of since we became friends. If we all met for the first time today, I'm not sure we become that good of friends. So yeah, I think there was a part of me that always was like, I'm not sure that I really fit in here. I'm not sure this is like, if I stay here, this is where I'm going to be firing on all cylinders,
But it wasn't like a struggle for you when you were younger. Like, because you just said, you're like, yeah,
No.
I would have said that I belonged.
Yeah, no, there was no, I didn't go to school where I was like people were getting bullied or picked on. Like we all just, I mean, there were fights, people getting fights and go rolling through the kudzu, but it wasn't, it was like I said, there were no cliques. There were no, I don't know that I was looked at as a weirdo by anybody, even if at times I felt like it. And there was I took karate for when I was a kid and kind of into high school. And at some point, I don't remember how this happened. Somebody told this story that they had seen me like jump up and kick the top of the light in the bathroom or something, which never happened. I definitely never did. But I certainly did not dissuade that story from spreading. I'm like, oh yeah, I definitely did that. So maybe that was another reason nobody ever fucked with me, is like people thought I was, Daniel LaRusso before Daniel LaRusso, that I could kick their ass.
Wait, did you get into karate because of the whole Bruce Lee excitement of the 70s? Because I got into
probably.
karate too, but mine was because of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the late 80s.
Sure. Yeah. Mine was before that. I again, like rooting through stuff in my parents' basement the other day, I found like I won, most improved student at my karate school in 1983. So I was like pre-Turtles, pre-Karate Kid. So yeah, I mean, I loved Bruce Lee. Like my older brothers showed me Bruce Lee movies. So Enter the Dragon was huge for me. Return of the Dragon, Fists of Fury, all those. So that I'm sure that was a big reason for me getting into karate.
I'm trying to figure out. We're right at the end, but I'm still trying to figure out like if Jasper's like the place where you go to get groceries or go see a movie or something like that. In my mind, is it more like a classic small town America? Like I'm imagining, I don't know if you've ever seen Gilmore Girls. Stars Hollow from Gilmore Girls. It's everyone, everyone's a character in this. Or is it more Lynchian? And I use that to mean like you got this nice facade and then underneath the soil you got a ripped off ear or whatever, right? Like that kind of feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I think the South's a little of both, like especially the modern South. I mean, Jasper has kind of the old town square, where there's still the Civil War statue that's been there forever, and the old courthouse and the, old storefronts, which is and theirs is pretty vibrant now. There's restaurants, there's a couple breweries there when, it was a dry county when I was growing up. And then like a lot of, little towns, the main part of town now is like one road where, there's the Walmart, and they're the biggest Walmart you ever see in your life, which seems to be packed with people any time of the day or night. And, the world's biggest, busiest Chick-fil-A across the street. And so it's just kind of one road with all the stuff along the two sides of it. Like that's really the heart of town. But then outside of that, people are scattered all through the woods with, you drive along and there's a few nice houses, and then there's completely abandoned, half falling down houses. That to me is the South. Like it's a little bit of all of that. So I think there's the happy, friendly part of that. And then there's the darker, redneck version of Twin Peaks.
Not a bad idea, by the way, or something. But you were not clued into that when you were a kid. It was more of the kind of like straight-laced, we go to church, I go to school, I do my writing part. That really, I would say,
right,
marked your childhood.
Yeah, all I was clued into was, Robert E. Howard, Conan stories, and Star Wars and Batman. The rest of it was just, that's all I knew. I didn't go anywhere else until I was a grown person.
It's funny. Can I just ask this then? Because the other side of it does show up in your writing a lot.
The other side of what?
I am curious if it is just you went back and you're like, oh, I and looked at it from a different angle as an adult, or if it is just totally created in your brain, which could be. I mean, I'm not saying,
Like which part, just the darker side of things?
yeah, which does show up in your writing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I was always, that's what I was always attracted to. Like, I mean, the stories I wrote were all very dark, the story, like I've got the shitty little trophy I won back in middle school for that short story contest, which was kind of me ripping off one of Alan Moore's issues of Vigilante, where it's like I mean, I'm in like 6th grade and I'm writing this like hard-boiled detective story about this guy trying to shut down a modern day slavery ring. So I think I was always, attracted to stories and things that were kind of beyond my age range. But I don't know how much I was really aware of that kind of in, my immediate surroundings. So yeah, that probably did take me some time to look back upon and figure out.
Do you know what was that attracted you to that? Or was it just like, oh, I am kind of aping. Shit? Yeah, I am aping these writers that speak to me in some way. Or was it something in you or in the town that you felt you were channeling in some way, or in your family or whatever, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that might be a topic to work out with my therapist, but I think I don't know. I think I enjoy kind of dark stories in the same way I enjoy a good comedy or a good, musical. Like it makes me happy. Like it just because it's dark or depressing or disturbing, there's still a happiness that is wrapped, like I'm the guy in a crowded movie theater, and something really dark happens. I'll laugh because I'm like, oh shit, like good job. What you just did there. You just scared me, or you just disturbed me, or, and I laugh as an expression of joy. So everybody's looking at me like, who's this fucking guy? Why is he laughing? Horribly inappropriate. So I think I've always had that. And I think maybe early on that was more towards darker stuff. I don't know if that spoke to just, if there was, frustration inside me of maybe not feeling like I totally fit in, or just not being able to feel like I could communicate successfully with the people around me, or I don't know where that love of or maybe I'm just hardwired to like that kind of stuff, or I don't know. Like, I mean, the movies that sparked me when I was a kid were like Road Warrior, was a huge favorite. And I mean, of course, like, First Blood and Rambo, which First Blood Part 2, which was so huge, and Prince. For me, he was someone who felt very repressed sexually, and certainly in a very small town, Southern, very Christian setting, like sex was not a thing we talked about. But the Prince, from the first time I heard Prince, in my mind, it's almost like I can picture like my shitty old radio, and the first time I hear a Prince song on the radio, and I feel like it was DMSR, which, is like dance music, sex, romance, which in my mind is the first time I became aware of like sex, like hearing that song for the first time. So I just, despite, how square and Christian I was, like my love of Prince is threaded through all that. So I think, I don't know if this all in any way answers your question. Maybe I don't have a definitive answer, but
no, yeah, totally. That suddenly this other, you were living your life, and suddenly there's this other dimension or this other facet of life that you didn't know kind of existed, or you maybe had like a vague awareness of, or whatever, like however it actually functioned in your head. And then suddenly you're like, oh fuck, there's more. Wait, there's more to this.
Sure.
And then and then from there on, there's the little like grain of sand in the clam. Terrible metaphor, but, but you know what I mean? That's the little thing that got in your brain that then start blossom throughout the rest of your life in some way.
Yes, for sure. I think in ways that I'm still unraveling and, working through, and whether that's personally or through my work, and that I'll probably be doing up until the day I keel over, like mid-sentence while writing something.
Actually seems like a very nice place to end. Jason, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. It was fun.
This was an absolute delight. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye.